Every October, when the leaves burned amber and gold, and the air carried the crisp scent of wood smoke in anticipation, Mara disappeared. Not literally, she still lived at home, still ate dinner at the kitchen table with her parents, still responded with soft nods and hums when her younger sister, Leela, talked about boys, parties, or her growing online followers, but Mara's spirit, that went somewhere else entirely, deep into her sketches, her tools, her materials, her vision. She built haunted worlds. It started when she was 13. Their parents had mentioned doing something festive that year, a pumpkin or two, maybe spiderwebs on the porch. But Mara had a different idea. She converted the garage into a shadowy maze of flickering lights, fake limbs, and distorted mirrors. She borrowed speakers to play eerie soundtracks. She spent every afternoon for 3 weeks building it by hand, crafting fear like an artist sculpts emotion from clay. That first Halloween, the neighborhood kids screamed and cried, in the best way. Her parents were shocked. So was Leela, who was only 11 then. But Leela smiled pretty in the fog and fake blood, wore a vampire cape, and posed for every picture that ended up on her Instagram. The next day, the local newspaper ran a picture with the headline, "Local Teens Haunted House Scares Up Record Crowd," and there was Leela front and center. Mara's name was not mentioned. She told herself it didn't matter. She wasn't doing it for the fame. She loved Halloween. She loved the craft of it. She loved the way fear twisted into wonder when done right. So the next year, she did it again, and again, and again, 12 years in a row. Each year more elaborate than the last, puppet-controlled ghouls, 3D printed skeletal arms bursting from walls, blacklight corridors with glow, and the dark riddles. She even built an animatronic werewolf that howled with synced motion sensors. Each year, her sister posted the photos. Each year, her parents gushed about Leela's vision, Leela's creativity, our little Halloween star. Mara worked through the nights in the backyard workshop, cutting herself on chicken wire, burning her fingers with glue guns, whispering her ideas into the darkness because no one else wanted to listen. She wasn't invisible. She was just background, like the wires behind the puppet. She tried once to correct it. "Hey, Mom, you know I'm the one who—" "I know, honey," her mom said, not looking up from her laptop. "But Leela has such a gift for aesthetics, don't you think? And she has the followers, so it makes sense she handles the public side." Public side. What a pretty name for credit theft. Her dad was worse. You and your sister make a great team. You build, she promotes, like Jobs and Wozniak. Mara wasn't a team. She was a ghost who carved pumpkins until her hands were blistered. A ghost who drew blueprints in the back of her physics notebooks. A ghost who cried once, alone, on Halloween night behind the cemetery prop she built from scratch, while Leela accepted applause from neighbors. 12 years, 144 months of being the invisible genius, and yet, every Halloween she came back because she loved the haunt. But this year, the 13th Halloween, something in Mara cracked. It started small. A neighbor kid asked her, "Did you help your sister again this year?" Help, like she was the assistant. A sidekick. Then she saw Leela's new post, building magic for the 13th year in a row. "Jack's Gull wouldn't be Halloween without my haunted touch." Thousands of likes. A retweet from a horror influencer, an offer to consult for a pop-up scare maze in L.A. Mara stared at her hands. The same hands that sculpted the latex demon mask 2 nights ago. The same hands that created all the magic. They were paint, smeared, calloused, and now shaking. Leela didn't just let the misunderstanding continue. She was feeding it, living off it, like a vampire. That night, Mara stood alone in the center of her newest haunted house design, a twisted Victorian asylum filled with portraits whose eyes followed you and whispers only triggered if you stepped on certain floorboards. She looked around. The empty hall pulsed with fog and red lighting. It was beautiful. It was hers, and suddenly, for the first time in 12 years, she wondered what would happen if she built something for herself. Not behind the curtain, not as the phantom, but center stage. That thought, small, sharp, and quietly furious, buried itself in her chest like a thorn. Next year, there would be no shared haunted house. Next year, there would be no sister riding her back. Next year, the ghost would stop hiding. The 13th Halloween passed like a ghost in fog. The haunted house had been Mara's best yet. A terrifyingly elegant Victorian asylum that had kids crying, teens shrieking, and even some adults saying it was better than the theme park mazes. As usual, the family stood on the porch accepting praise. And as usual, Leela soaked it up like sunlight, smiling into cameras and pretending the bloodied claw marks on the wall weren't something Mara had painstakingly designed to respond to body heat. Mara stood in the shadows, just out of frame, as always, but something had changed. She felt nothing. No pride, no joy, just silence and smoke. For the first time, she hadn't added her signature mark, a small white crow hidden somewhere in the maze, her quiet way of saying, "I was here." This year, the crow never came. 2 weeks later, while scrolling through Instagram out of bored self-punishment, she came across a photo that made her stomach drop. Leela posing in front of a stage in L.A., under a banner that read, West Coast Horror Expo, Young Creatives Panel. The caption, "So proud to be invited to speak on designing immersive haunted experiences. This has been 13 years in the making. Skull, black hash self-made hash women in horror." Mara didn't feel her hands move. She just clicked again, opened the link in Leela's bio, her sister's professional website. There it was. A portfolio, her photos, from the haunted houses Mara had built over the years, labeled My Designs, descriptions, notes on construction, even technical blueprints Mara had drawn in private, somehow copied and uploaded. Mara's work, Leela's name, every single page. She sat frozen at her desk, her face drained of blood. A thick, heavy nausea settled in her throat like old candy corn. It wasn't just that Leela took credit. It was that she'd built a life off Mara's stolen craft. She had job offers, sponsorships, invitations to conventions. People were calling her a pioneer, and the family, had they known, had they helped, Mara didn't ask. She didn't want their answers, not yet. Instead, she closed the browser and opened a blank document. The page glowed white, clean and full of vengeance. Later that week, she ran into an old friend at the library. Jonas Sinclair. They'd been in theater club together back in high school, Mara on sets, Jonah on sound design. He'd moved away after graduation, but was back in town for a few months. They talked for hours about life, about the weird pull of nostalgia, about horror and design, and what it felt like to give your best work away for nothing. "I always thought you were the one building those haunted houses," he said, frowning. "But then I saw your sister on that podcast last month, taking all the credit. Thought maybe I remembered wrong." "No," Mara said softly. "You remembered right." He stared at her. "Then why are you letting her get away with it?" She didn't have an answer, not yet. But that night, after Jonah left, she clicked on the folder on her desktop marked Deadlight. It was a project she'd shelved 2 years ago, too ambitious. At the time, a haunted house concept unlike anything she'd done before. A surreal dreamscape where rooms shifted based on choices, where lighting controlled emotion, and every guest's journey was different. It had been too big for a backyard, but not for the Midwestern Regional Haunted Showcase, which Jonah told her was accepting entries, anonymously, for its first ever open call. Mara hesitated for one heartbeat, then she clicked New File. Over the next 2 months, Mara changed. She started staying late at the community college makerspace where she worked part-time. She bought wood and silicone with what little savings she had. Jonah helped her with lighting rigs and projection mapping. And at night, she wrote a pitch proposal so detailed it could have doubled as a thesis. No one knew what she was doing, not her parents, not Leela. She kept the secret pressed close to her chest like a pulse. And while building her masterpiece, she learned something else. Leela had signed a deal, a haunted attraction design contract for a corporate Halloween event in Dallas, using Mara's past blueprints. But this time, without Mara's help, Leela was on her own. Mara watched from the sidelines as her sister posted half-finished renders, then tried to pass off AI-generated images as her concept art. The design firm loved the mock-ups until they realized they were plagiarized. The deal was cancelled, quietly, embarrassingly, and Leela, she never admitted it publicly. She just moved on to her next lie. 2 weeks before Halloween, Mara got the email. Congratulations, you've been selected for the final showcase. They asked for her stage name, her builder ID, anything but her real name, as the judging was blind until the final reveal. She typed builder name, the White Crow, and hit send. For the first time in 13 years, she was building something no one could steal. Halloween night arrived, sharp and cold like the edge of a blade, but this year, there was no haunted house in the Carmichael family's backyard. No fog machines hissing to life. No Mara crouched in the shadows tweaking lights. No parents sipping cider and smiling for neighbors. No Leela posing in gothic lace under flickering lanterns. The lawn was dark. Leela told everyone she was taking a creative break this year, claiming the industry had drained her, that she was exploring more meaningful work. But the truth was quieter. She had nothing to show. Meanwhile, 60 miles away in a converted barn outside the city limits, a line of people stretched around a field, breath frosting in the night air. The buzz was electric. They had come to see Deadlight, the haunted experience created by a mysterious new artist known only as the White Crow. The rumors had spread fast over the past few weeks. A haunted house where every decision reshaped your path. A room where your fears followed you literally. A mirror that whispered secrets only you could hear. No two visitors had the same experience. Every review said the same thing. It didn't feel like just a haunted house. It felt like someone knew me. Inside, Mara stood in the control room, her fingers poised on the board. She watched visitors enter the first chamber, a corridor lined with floating, whispering masks. Jonah stood beside her, tracking the light rig timings. "You nervous?" he asked. Mara exhaled slowly. "No." Because this was the work of a woman who had built 13 haunted houses in silence. This was the voice that had been buried under fake praise, filtered photos and hashtags. This was hers, not stolen. Not shared, hers. 2 days later, the results came in. Deadlight was awarded Best Immersive Design and Audience Favorite. The judges called it genre-defining, emotionally layered, and haunting in every sense. A video interview was scheduled with the mystery creator, the White Crow, and streamed live for the expo's finale. Mara debated saying nothing, letting her work speak, remaining a ghost forever, but then she saw Leela's latest post. A picture of an old scarecrow Mara had made in high school, cropped, filtered. Captioned, "Missing the Halloween magic this year. Here's a throwback to one of my fav build skulls. Barkles. #TBD #creative life. Still clinging, still pretending. No more." The interview began. The camera panned to Mara, sitting in front of a table covered in design sketches, masks, and lighting plans. Her name appeared in bold. Mara Carmichael, creator of Deadlight, the White Crow. Within minutes, the comments exploded. "Wait, she's Leela's sister. She's the real builder, so Leela's stuff wasn't hers. OMG, this woman is a genius. Why didn't we know her name before?" The interviewer leaned forward. "Why? Died. Mara, many of our viewers are shocked. You've been behind some of the most iconic backyard haunts in the state, and no one knew." Mara gave a small smile. "I didn't disappear. I was just never seen." There was a pause, then she added, "But I'm here now. And I'm done hiding behind someone else's story." The fallout was quiet but deep. Leela didn't post for 3 weeks, then came the notes from Mara's parents, the calls, the awkward voicemails. "Didn't know how much it meant to you. Your sister was just better at being out there. We're so proud of you now." Now, Mara didn't reply. She wasn't angry anymore. That was the strangest part. The rage had burned itself out, not in fire but in creation. In truth, in finally being seen. Halloween the next year was different. Deadlight went on tour. Mara was invited to guest design for major theme park haunt. Her Instagram, once empty, overflowed with messages from young women in workshops, teens obsessed with set design, and haunted house builders who'd always felt like shadows. And as for her family, she didn't go home that year. Instead, she carved a single white crow into a pumpkin, placed it on the steps of her workshop, and turned on the lights. This time, when guests screamed, they knew exactly who had built the fear.